What does a culture of school leadership look like? What are the 5 pillars of effective school leadership? What do teachers want more from their principals, presence or presence? Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live on YouTube every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cabeen, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's Teacher on Fire is Allyson Apsey. Allyson has been an award-winning school leader for nearly 20 years, leading all levels from elementary to high school. She is the author of several books, including What Makes a Great Principal, Lead with Collaboration, and Leading the Whole Teacher. She currently serves districts, schools, and organizations throughout the country as a keynote speaker, professional learning provider, and an instruction and leadership coach with creative leadership solutions. You can connect with Allyson on LinkedIn, on X and Instagram at Allyson Apsey, and at her website, AllysonApsey.com. Allyson, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to light it up?
Oh, I am so ready. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It is such a pleasure to finally connect one-on-one. It's about time, and you're one of those superstars in our education content spaces that I've looked at for some time thinking I've got to have a chat with her. So here we finally are. Thank you so much. Allyson, before we get into your mission and work, would you take us to that story of adversity?
Yeah.
Would you share with us about a time of challenge somewhere in your personal or professional learning journey and describe how you overcame it?
It's funny, as I was thinking about this conversation and you said, Allyson, you're one of the superstars of education. And I kind of cringe at that because one of the adversities I've had to face and continue to face is that the whole idea of imposter syndrome. Like, I'm here to learn and grow and become a better person and a better professional in everything I do. And that's my whole mission with what I share via writing, or whether it's, making a TikTok video, whatever the case is. I'm totally engrossed in becoming a better version of myself all the time. And to have the opportunity to share that with others and to hear from them that they connect with what I've written and shared is amazing. But I think the adversity that I'm continually having to overcome is the idea of I'm good enough. Like, I am, I do have things to contribute that are of value. And you'd say, Allyson, you've written 7 books. Like, of course, right? Like, but no, like, I have to work on overcoming that all the time, personally and professionally.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. That is a helpful reminder, and I think encouraging for many of our listeners as they look to you. As you said, you're quite accomplished in many respects, but thank you for acknowledging that the learning continues. And I really see that in you. And even as I introduced you as a teacher on fire, I know you would consider yourself a teacher and learner for life. Well, congratulations, Allyson, on the publication of What Makes a Great Principal, the 5 pillars of effective school leadership. I added it to my Kindle this week. I only got as far as the opening reviews, what people are saying about the book. So I have not made it too far, but I'm looking forward to making this one of my summer reads. Allyson, tell us about how this book happened and who's it for?
Yeah, that's a fun story. So it was such an honor to co-author this book with George Couros, but we also have 15 contributing authors who are featured in the book. And I'll talk about the book in just a minute, but let's talk about how it came to be. George and I got connected in 2015, and I heard him as a keynote speaker at Michigan Principals Conference. And like so many people who hear George, like, he inspired me to get active on social media and get connected, but also to start blogging. So I started my Serendipity in Education blog in December of 2015. And that led to my first book, which was The Path to Serendipity. And then, that just kept going to now my 7th, I think, book, which is What Makes a Great Principal. So George and I stayed connected, and George wrote a couple books called Because of a Teacher, and then Because of a Teacher 2. And I contributed to Because of a Teacher 2. And George called me and said, hey, I have this idea. let's do kind of a because of a teacher for principals. Would you want to co-author it with me? And I said, of course, like, or, let me think about it, George. No, but if George comes knocking, like, the answer is yes, 100%. But then we paused. And in fact, he says I bugged him about this idea, which I don't remember being a pest about it, but I did like tap him on the shoulder a few times and said, are we going to write this book or what's going on? And it was interesting because I wrote another book called Leading the Whole Teacher, and I sent a copy to George, and he read it, and he called me, and I remember exactly where I was, and he's like, Allyson, I'm this is your best book. I loved it, and I think I know what I want to do with what makes a great principal now. Because he really appreciated how I weave research in with stories, and so it's a book. Leading the Whole Teacher is grounded in research, but it's very a personal approach, and there's a lot of voice in it, and it's readable. And he loved how I kind of wove those two things together. And he's like, I want you to do that to introduce each of the 5 pillars in what makes a great principal. So as soon as he's like, we're going to take because of a teacher, leading the whole teacher, put those concepts together to develop this book of what makes a great principal. So that was the origin story. And George is a brilliant writer, and he did such a great job in his chapters of this book also.
Yeah, so that was my next question. How many chapters did you and George each contribute to this book?
So George kind of does a preface for each of the pillars. So he introduces, we each wrote an introductory chapter for the book, and then we each wrote a chapter for each of the 5 pillars. And then we have 3 contributing authors for each of the pillars also.
Okay. All right. Well, George, as we all know, is such a great networker, and he has such a large audience. So he's so good at bringing the right people together. And so I have no doubt that the right people are involved in this book and contributing in addition to yourself. I was just with my good friend Livia Chan this week, and she talked about how she devoured it in basically one weekend. So I'm, as I said, really looking forward to adding this to my summer reads. Now, I'm curious, as a part-time administrator myself, not a principal, but a vice principal here, Allyson, I'm curious, what are the 5 pillars? Are you able to let us know what the 5 pillars are without spoiling too much?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So they are relationship builder, continuous learner, talent cultivator, resource maximizer, and visionary. Those are the 5 pillars.
And those sound like through lines that will, I'm sure, run throughout the entire book through many of the other ideas that are connected. But I love those so much. I'm going to need to listen to them again. But again, I've got the book. So I've got the roadmap in front of me. One of the quotes, I wanted to come to you with a couple of the quotes that I found on your feed and on Dave Burgess's feed on X. The first one you wrote, or George wrote, someone in the book wrote, the most valuable commodity in any school is the collective wisdom of the educator. So my question is, practically speaking, how can building leaders do a better job of tapping into that wisdom?
Yeah, and this is, it's a big question because it's a mindset, first of all, that you recognize that the answers to all of your challenges are there in your building with the professionals you have there. So once you have that mindset, it's about conversation and about listening. But practically speaking, one idea that I put into place that was so helpful as a principal is I sent everything out to my staff as a draft. Like, and I would include like, hey, like this is something I'm working on, for next month. And I would throw a link to the Google Doc in my weekly update and just say, hey, if you have a chance, take a peek at it. Let me know what your thoughts are. And then some people would completely ignore it, which is fine because it's an option. And then some people who like to have a voice and want to make sure that what we're doing collectively as a school is aligned with our mission, vision, and the goals that we have would completely support me and read that draft and give me feedback on it. Like even staff meetings, I would say, here's my draft agenda. Am I missing anything? or, might some of these agenda items be better as an email, or just give me some feedback. And just that continually, that's why I say it's a mindset. Like if we're always asking for feedback, we're always going to be able to collect or tap into that collective wisdom. Just one other thing is I wrote a book with Jessica Gomez called Lead with Collaboration. And some people, it's a complete guide to transform staff meetings. And some people are like, Allyson, not everything requires collaboration. We can't do everything by committee. And I say, I'm like, let's be careful not to confuse collaboration with committee, because 100% we don't have to have a committee for every decision we want to make, but we can have collaboration. And here's an example. So, or like somebody said, we're not going to have a meeting about when to schedule fire drills. Like, no, let's not do that. However, when I go ahead and just create the schedule, I schedule the fire drill during state testing because I wasn't thinking of everything. But if I send out, like, here's the draft fire drill schedule, if somebody wants to take a peek at it and let me know if they see any issues, we could prevent those kind of issues, like having a fire alarm go off at an inopportune time. So, no, we're not going to have committees for everything, but we can have collaboration for just about everything.
I love that so much. It doesn't need to be a committee. It can simply be a collaboration. And you talked about that culture of commenting on Google Docs. And I love that too. I often find myself sharing docs with commenting privileges, right? And the message to teachers and colleagues is you don't necessarily need to email me back your thoughts. You can write on the doc. If you do see a problem with one of my fire drill dates, go ahead and let us all know, and we can workshop this a little bit. Another great quote from the book, Allyson, says that a culture of leadership is far more powerful than a book of policies. I'm intrigued by this term, a culture of leadership. So what does that look like in our schools, and how do we get there?
So this actually is a quote from a contributing author, Dr. Ryan Daniel, who is a principal in Virginia, and she's amazing. But she, in the book, writes about tapping into teacher leadership. She became a principal at a new school, and she didn't have an assistant principal, and she was used to having an assistant. And she just realized, like, you don't have to have an assistant principal to have other leaders in the building. Actually, you already have other leaders in the building. So partnering with them, finding out what strengths exist on your campus, in your staff, and then tapping into those people for pockets of leadership or overall leadership. But really, she's talking about how to just empower teacher leaders.
All right. You've said that teachers don't want presence from their principals. They want presence. And if you're listening to the audio only version of the podcast, I'm talking about NTS versus NCE. What would your encouragement be for that exhausted administrator who says, Allyson, I know that's true, but I'm struggling to do it all. And if I'm visible and active in classrooms, I'm going to be working till 11 p.m. tonight.
Which is the reality, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the purposes for writing What Makes a Great Principal. I was a principal during the pandemic, and I had a goal to be in every classroom every day. Like, I would wear a laminated list of the classrooms on my lanyard, and I would mark them off with a vis-a-vis marker as I went around to all of the classrooms. And did I get to every classroom every day? I didn't, but that was my goal. And I tried to vary it. So it wasn't like I would go out first thing in the morning, but I need to be in classrooms in the afternoon too. I need to see what's going on throughout the day. And sometimes it would just be like popping through, and sometimes it would be sitting down with my work, and sometimes it would be doing like a kind of official observation. But then during the pandemic, I became glued to the office because rules and regulations were constantly changing. Parents were calling with questions and concerns, and kids were sick, and staff was sick. And I needed to be there to answer all of those questions and help navigate from the office. And that happened to a lot of principals. So I was constantly just, putting out fires and reacting. And that becomes muscle memory. And I see this because I travel around the country and I see principals with their cell phones, their walkies, their smartwatches. It's actually difficult for them just to sit and be present. Even when something's not going off, like the walkie or the cell phone, they're waiting for it to go off, waiting to react. And when we're talking about presence, we're talking about more than just physically being there. We're talking about being in that room, being in the conversation, being aware of what's going on in the classroom, in the hallways, in the lunchroom, fully engaged. And that is hard. That is no fault of any principal, but that's where everybody is. And the book, What Makes a Great Principal, helps realign the priorities, because our job isn't going to get easier or less. We have to decide what we're going to prioritize and how we're going to spend our days.
Wow, tall order, but there it is. Be present and be physically present, but not just physically present, but mentally, emotionally present as well. Be engaged with what is happening around you, and those rewards will come, right? I mean, we know it's true. I think many leaders know that is true, but it's just building that intention and exercising that discipline to make it happen. I'm curious, Allyson, and there were so many questions I could have asked you. I had to cut myself short, but if you were taking a principal position at a brand new to you school this fall, what is one practical step that you would take to build staff culture right away?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So George gives advice of don't change a single thing in your school until you know a strength of every staff member. So I think that's the best advice. Figure out a strength of every staff member. Make sure the staff member knows you see that in them. Then take a look at, what needs changing. And that's going to help build culture. If people feel seen and valued by you, that's going to change the culture in a building. The other thing is, I've watched new principals go into positions and they build their leadership themselves as somebody who's going to fix everything that was wrong with the last leader. So, if people are complaining about something with the previous leader, which they will, then the new principal comes in and makes it their mission to fix that particular problem. And that's a weak platform. If you go into a new building, I think you might be better off looking at what were the strengths of the last leader and how can you tap into those strengths first.
Right.
And sometimes there's changes that we have to make right away just for safety. Go ahead, make those changes, but hold off on every other one until you get to know a strength of every single staff member.
I like that. It's sort of an appreciative assessment. I've heard that term. And I think my fear would be sort of kind of a humorous angle on this, I suppose, but I wouldn't want to assess a staff member incorrectly or reduce or in a reducing sort of way, if that makes sense. Like I might not, if George comes into my school and he's the new principal and he immediately assesses that I'm good at some sort of technology piece, I may not want to be the tech guy, but maybe that's the way he has to sort of learn who I am, right? Anyway, I think most colleagues, seriously though, would recognize that, hey, this leader is making an attempt to get to know me. They've seen something. And over time, the nuances will play out, right?
For sure.
Teachers, if you're enjoying this conversation, consider adding the Teachers on Fire YouTube channel to your morning commute. Start your day on fire. Allyson, we're about to head into a rapid fire round. I'll keep my responses to a minimum and just hit us with whatever comes to mind. First question for you: outside of education, what's another area of learning for you? What is it that ignites your passions away from professional learning and brings you alive as a human being?
Oh, I love that question. I love history. And so in historical fiction or biographies, autobiographies, I love learning about people. I really love people. I have a house full of people here for the 4th of July holiday, and I love spending time with my family and friends. that is really important to me also. That ignites me as a person.
Share about one personal habit or a productivity hack that contributes to your success and keeps your fire burning.
I don't feel super productive this weekend, so this one is a little bit hard because we've been focusing on just having fun and enjoying each other. But as far as writing, I keep in mind that, like, I don't make a living with my writing. I write because I love it. So if I sit down to write something and I'm not feeling it, I shut the laptop and I walk away and I wait until I do feel passionate about it. And actually then I'm a better writer if I hold off until I'm really feeling it. So I guess that's a productivity hack, is like, don't force it. I let it, just try to let it come naturally.
Okay. Point us to an EdTech tool or app that you currently love using somewhere in your professional practice, maybe in your writing, maybe in your principalship.
But everybody loves it, but Canva.
Yes.
Yes, is my best friend. I am not artsy, but I love designing graphics. And I think a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? Like, I love to be able to design for my keynotes, or just even just share on social media or on my blog. So, but the other tool that I really enjoy using when I present is Mentimeter, for like interactivity with the audience, because I think we have people who would never raise their hand or grab a mic and share, but have valuable things to contribute to the conversation. And if we use an interactive tool like Mentimeter, where they can answer, share their thoughts, we can all learn from them. We can access, that's another way to access the collective wisdom. I think a tool like Mentimeter is great for staff meetings. I mean, even if you have 10 people in the room, give them a way to contribute that is something other than, raising their hand and speaking up, because we have so many people on our staff who won't do that.
Allyson, you're a prolific author yourself. I'm going to call you that here in our education circles. Tell us about a book that has impacted you in a positive way, one you're reading right now or one of your all-time faves.
So one of my all-time faves is Lead Like a Pirate by Beth Huff and Shelley Burgess. I quote that book all the time, and I read it as I was transitioning in my principalship, and it was just a powerful learning tool for me. One of the things that they say in the book is, people won't tear down things that they help build. And I'm passionate about collaboration, and I do not like the term buy-in, because I don't think we need to be in the business of selling things to people. But if we ask for their contributions and allow them to collaborate, then we're going to build something that's better and that people won't tear apart.
It's about investment, although maybe there's a financial angle there. I'm not sure. But tell us about someone that we should follow, Allyson, on Education X, Instagram, LinkedIn, maybe TikTok, and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
One of my favorite educational leaders is Jessica Cabeen. And she's a prolific writer, has written many books, Principle and Balance, Balance Like a Pirate. She is one of the authors of that book. Lead with Grace. And she is just hilarious. And I've seen her speak many times, and just somebody who really inspires me to accept myself, do a lot of reflection, and to give myself a lot of grace, the grace that I allow others.
You appear on a lot of stages, Allyson, and I'm sure you've had your share of electric speeches and presentations. Who is one educator that you would recommend I interview here on the Teachers on Fire podcast?
I mean, George, I'm sure you've interviewed him, right? Yes. My co-author for Lead with Collaboration is Jessica Gomez, and she is an educational leader in California, and she is just so wise and incredible. So she would be somebody, a great person to have on your podcast.
Okay, another Jessica.
Yeah.
And just for fun, what are you streaming during your downtime right now? I know my wife and I have suddenly got into Succession. What are you into these days?
So I've been watching Bridgerton, but I finished that. So Queen Charlotte, because like I love historical fiction, and yeah, so I am finishing Queen Charlotte right now.
All right. And Allyson, as we wrap this up, what are the best ways for the Teachers on Fire listening to follow you?
So I'm at Allyson Apsey on all the social medias, and even TikTok, much to my teenage son's chagrin. Yeah, or AllysonApsey.com, or you can email me at AllysonApsey@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this morning, Allyson. I know your time is valuable. And as you said off air, you're entertaining family. You're on the road, or pardon me, you're not on the road, but you're on vacation time. So thank you so much. Sincerely, I'm so grateful for the wisdom that you shared with us, even in this short conversation this morning. I can't wait to get into the book, What Makes a Great Principal. If you are a leader or an aspiring leader, make sure you pick up a copy. Teachers on Fire, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Allyson Apsey sparked your thinking and ignited your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.